Welcome back to the Bhadracarya Online Festival.
欢迎大家回到线上先行节。
Hope everyone rested well and is ready for for another day of developing merit and wisdom together.
希望大家都休息得不错，准备一起迎接增长福德和智慧的新的一天。
Except for those, joining us in different time zones. Your rest comes after this, I guess.
除了某些时区的朋友，你们可能在结束以后才能休息了。
So yesterday we mainly explored the foundations for this, for the practice text we're looking at, and then just the opening theme we did.
昨天我们主要讲了这个教文的基础，讲了个开场主题。
Now we can actually start to look properly at the text, which you can download from the main website if you haven't already. So we will just start with the customary homage.
现在我们开始正式看这篇教文，你可以从仁波切的网站上下载。我们一开始先按照习俗先行礼敬。
So, from the text at the beginning, the customary homage, Goye, to guide all wandering beings who have been my parents, by whichever of the 5 poisonous afflictions are present in me, the 5 poisons, without exception, must be drawn out of sentient beings.
开头按照习俗是礼敬，然后开始教文。过也度尽前世父母有情故，任何烦恼五毒我所有，用以拔尽众生之五毒。
We start with an expression of wonder, of amazement, of celebration, goye, because this whole practice is about bodhichitta, and that's the thing that is really worth celebrating. And the thing is that's worth celebrating, the thing that's worth having a festival for.
开头的这一个过夜是表达惊奇惊叹，因为这整个修行是关于菩提心的，菩提心是值得庆祝的，是值得以一个节日来庆贺的。
Explored yesterday, the very word for Buddhist in Tibetan is Nangpa, the one who looks inwards.
正如昨天所说，佛教徒的藏文是 Namba， 向内看的人。
So for those who look outside, outside a mela, a festival, or a festival has to be an outer celebration. But ours is an inner festival. So the fireworks, the enjoyment, all of that happens inside.
对于向外看的人，节日一定是在外部举办的，但我们的节日是内在的节日，所以那些烟花啊、欢乐啊，都发生在我们的内心。
So to understand what we mean by this is that we need to bring, to mind the truth of suffering.
要理解这一点的意思，首先要理解四圣谛的苦谛。
And that we must, uproot its source.
我们必须根除苦的根源。
That we must actualize its cessation.
必须证得苦的寂灭。
And therefore we must cultivate the path to its cessation, the unconditioned.
所以必须修行通往究竟灭地的道途。
But not just for our own liberation, but we are determined to free all sentient beings from suffering for good.
不 不仅是为了我们自己的解脱，我们决心彻底度脱一切众生，远离
So
苦难。
this is where bodhichitta comes in.
这就是菩提心进入的地方。
As the master Shantideva summarized in his in the first chapter of Bodhichaya Avatara, the entering the Bodhisattva's way of life. He said, we need to know the difference between wanting to go on a journey and the actual journey itself.
寂天菩萨在《入菩萨行论》第一品中说，我们需要明白，想要踏上旅程和真正的旅程本身是有区别的。
So when we talk about bodhicitta, we also have to know the difference between aspiring bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta.
所以我们讨论菩提心的时候，需要知道愿菩提心和行菩提心的区别。
The thing that's so extraordinary is that this practice doesn't just bring us to complete bodhi in order to benefit all sentient beings. It also brings us more peace, more healing, more happiness, more strength right here, right now too.
这个修行的特别之处在于，它不仅能带我们证得圆满佛果，利益一切众生，而且当下就能给我们带来更多的平静、疗愈、快乐和力量。
There's no more, precious, wish-fulfilling jewel in the world to be found.
这意味着世上没有比这更珍贵的如意宝了。
So in that way, we say that sentient beings are the wish-fulfilling jewel.
从这个角度说，我们说众生就是如意宝。
The reason this is because our aspiration to attain enlightenment is based on their suffering, is based on them.
原因是我们获得证悟的愿心是基于众生的苦，基础是众生。
It's about wanting to do something about it, to wanting them to bring them all to Buddhahood.
是因为我们想要做些什么，想要带领他们所有人证得佛果。
So that causes us to engage in the practice that takes us to enlightenment.
这让我们进入正行去行持，能让我们证悟的修行。
And then the practices we do for engaging bodhicitta, such as generosity, patience. Who are we generous towards? Who are we patient towards? Sentient beings.
那行菩提心的修行，例如布施、忍辱等等六度的修行，我们是对谁布施，对谁忍辱呢？是众
Sentient
生。
beings who have been our mothers in countless previous lives, but are suffering in this endless cycle of samsara.
那众生在无量前世中都曾经做过自己的母亲，但他们仍然在这无尽的轮回中受苦。
So, from the very beginning of our practice, all sentient beings are the object of our aspiration.
所以从修行的一开始，一切众生就是我们发愿的对象。
So, on the path, all sentient beings are the object of our, engaging in the paramitta, the transcendent perfections.
在法道上，一切众生是我们行持六度及六波罗蜜多的对象。
And the result, which is perfectly complete Buddha, is the state in which one actually brings, optimum benefit for all sentient beings.
修行的结果即圆满正觉佛果，是能给一切众生带来究竟的利益。
So for that reason, bodhicitta is the supreme wish-fulfilling jewel, because all sentient beings are our wish-fulfilling jewel.
所以菩提心是最殊胜的如意宝，因为一切众生是我们的如意宝。
So now understanding this is really important. It's really important because we're talking about bringing about the ultimate welfare of all sentient beings.
理解这一点很重要，因为我们讨论的是给一切众生带来究竟利益。
We're not talking about not a temporary relief, not a blessing or just just some kind of a higher rebirth or anything. No, but the permanent peace, the permanent peace and happiness for liberation and enlightenment.
我们讲的不是暂时的帮助，也不仅仅是加持或者是投胎到更好的地方去，而是永恒的安乐、解脱和证悟。
And who can do that? Well, we said that yesterday. A god? A god cannot do that because no matter how lofty, no matter how mystical, celebrated, appealing, every god, every Deva, every Brahma, all of them still belong within the cycle of samsara.
那谁能做到？我们昨天讲过了，是神吗？神是做不到的，因为无论一个神多么崇高神秘，多受尊崇，多么吸引人，每一个天神、梵天都还属于
Even if
轮
they
回
have,
的一部分。
attained indescribable, elevated states, like that might last for eons and eons, they're still conditioned
哪
states.
怕他们已经获得了高的无法形容的状态，而且可能持续很多劫，但那还是受因缘控制的状态。
So how can a conditioned being bring us to the unconditioned?
一个受因缘控制的众生如何能够带领我们超越因缘？不可能。
Well, then what about the Shravakas?
那声闻呢？
Those who follow the Hinayana, seek to liberate themselves from samsara. They do. But what about everyone else?
声闻他们修行小乘，追求自身从轮回中的解脱，但是别人怎么办呢？
Now they do have loving kindness. They do have loving kindness. They have compassion and so on and so forth, which they call the Chatur Brahma Vihara. Chatur Brahma Vihara. The four Brahma abidings.
声闻也讲慈心，也讲悲心，他们把它叫做四梵住，就是四种梵天所安住之处。
Because they meditate to make the subjective experience of love and compassion boundless like Brahma.
因为他们禅修以获得慈悲的主观性体验，就像梵天一样无量无边。
So yes, however, in the Mahayana, we talk about not just any compassion, but great compassion. The great compassion of the four immeasurables. Because it's not just the subject that is immeasurable, but the object of all infinite sentient beings that is meditated on as well.
但在大乘中，我们讲的不是一般的慈悲，而是大悲心，四无量心的大悲心。因为不只是禅修的主体无量，禅修的客体对象即无量有情众生也是无量的。
Perfect Buddha who has traversed the five paths, who has ascended the 10 levels of the Mahayana path, has the fully optimized capacity to bring every single one of us to freedom from suffering.
只有已经经历了大乘法道、五道十地的圆满正觉佛，才有完全的能力度每一个众生脱离苦难。
So that is why we resolve to traverse the five paths, to ascend the 10 levels to become perfectly complete Buddhas.
所以我们决心修行五道十地，证得圆满正觉佛果。
Now, one might wonder that if our focus is inwards, as Nangpas, that we say, to develop the mind inside, then how come the object of our practice, all of it, is all sentient beings?
那有人可能会问，作为佛教徒，我们的关注点是在内心，是在内部修行自信。
Because all sentient beings are definitely outside,
那
right?
为什么修行的客体是一切众生呢？因为一切众生肯定是在外面，对吗？
Actually, there is no contradiction. Because the very reason we need to reach Buddhahood is that until then, we are limited. we're limited, and those limitations are in the mind.
这里是没有矛盾的，因为我们需要证得佛果的原因在于，在证果之前，我
So
们
to
是受到
develop
限制
the
的，
two
限制就在我们的
accumulations
内心。
as an inward focus in relation to sentient beings who are all suffering is the way to reach out the unlimited potential.
以受苦众生为基础，在内心累积而资粮，我们是以这种方式去探索无限的潜力。
So this text, the text we're looking at, goes straight to the heart of this.
所以我们所看的这篇教文直指这一个核心。
We say wandering beings, wandering beings, because unlike a great bodhisattva, who can choose to incarnate wherever they need to, wandering beings are compelled into different states of existence in the six realms of samsara by karma.
我们说众生是漂泊众生，
So
因为跟大菩萨不一样，菩萨能根据自己的需要选择转世出生在哪里，而众生是受业力驱使，被迫在六道当中轮回。
So it's like we are wandering over, lifetimes.
我们是生生世世的漂泊。
The problem is that it's like we don't ever get a rest from this cycle. We don't get ever a proper rest from this wandering when our karma is under the influence of the 5 poisonous afflictions, as it says here.
问题在于，在这个轮回当中，我们永远得不到休息。我们的业在烦恼五毒的影响下，让我们在轮回中漂泊，无法休息。
So we ourselves don't find proper rest. We don't get a satisfaction while our lives are affected by this karma, by the karma of the afflictions.
我们无法休息，只要我们的人生还是被业、烦恼所生的业力影响，就永远不会满足。
And we ourselves don't find all sentient beings. It's all the sentient beings who want to save from suffering have the same problem.
所有想要摆脱痛苦的众生都有着同样的问题。
So we're not waiting for liberation from this conditioning to come from the outside.
我们不能够等待从这种因缘之中的解脱从外部而来。
In fact, bodhichitta means that we are taking responsibility for this.
事实上，菩提心意味着我们对此负起责任来。
We are developing the internal ability to respond to this suffering by overcoming the cause, which is internal.
我们培养回应痛苦的内心的能力，是通过战胜苦因来培养这种能力，而苦因也是在内心。
Namely, the main afflictions like, attachment, delusion, and so on.
苦因就是主要的烦恼，例如贪嗔痴等等。
So since the cause of suffering is internal, expecting liberation to come from the outside, whether from a god, whether from change of global events, or from our maternal wealth, anything, all these things, it makes no sense.
因为苦因是在内心，所以期待解脱来自外部，无论是神还是全球事件演化，还是物质财富，所有这些都
For
没有
example,
意义。
if we see lots of smoke, outside, we know that it comes from a fire.
例如，
Of a fire of one kind or another, outside.
例如，如果我们看到外面冒出很多烟，我们就知道外面肯定哪里起火了。
So the only way to put out that smoke, to stop that smoke is to put out the fire that's causing it, right?
所以熄灭那个烟的唯一方式就是扑灭会升起烟的火，对吗？
If we just wish, that smoke stops, that would be absurd, right? It would make sense.
如果我们仅仅是希望烟会消失，那就很荒谬，对吗？毫无道理。
So since our karma is determined by our intentions, which are internal, and karma drives our existence in suffering, the only way for liberation, true liberation, is through our own inner work.
因为业驱动着我们在轮回中受苦，业是由我们内心的意志决定的，所以通往解脱的唯一途径是通过内心。
And there is no more powerful way to liberate ourselves, to liberate oneself and others than bodhichitta.
让自己和他人解脱，没有比菩提心更有力量的途径了。
So what are the 5 afflictions? And in what way? The question is, in what way are they poisonous?
烦恼五毒是什么？它们为什么有毒？
The first is raga, attachment or passion.
第一个是贪，或者说欲望。
So this is talked about a lot in Buddha Dharma, but it's very important. It's important that we understand its context.
佛法里对贪的谈论非常多，但是它很重要，理解它的背景上下
Our
文很重
concern
要。
is not, for example, a more instinctual level of what we could call attachment to our life that makes us, stand back from danger quickly as a reflex. When we're standing too close to the traffic, to the traffic of the roadside.
我们担心的贪不是例如说那种本能的对生命的执着，例如说在路边站得离车流太近，就会本能往后退，远离危险。
Now that's more of a biological factor.
这更多的是一种生物学上的因素。
So no one in Buddhism is asking anyone to try to override their survival instincts or anything like that.
佛教不是让人去推翻自己的生存本能之类的东西。
We will hardly call it poisonous if it's, preventing untimely death. No, not at all.
能防止非正常死亡的东西，我们肯定不会说它有毒。
Passions or attachments are described as poisonous if they hurt us and others.
我们说欲望或贪执是毒，是因为它伤害我们和他人。
Such as compelling us to behave, to speak, to think, and so on, in ways that are obsessive, that are selfish, that are, greedy, and so on and so forth, and thereby creating the karmic causes for suffering, pain, for further pain, suffering, dissatisfaction in our lives.
例如贪欲会逼迫我们以执着、自私、贪婪的方式去行为、说话和思考，从而创造业因，带来痛苦，以及更长远的痛苦和不满足。
So this is not an abstract theory that Buddhists are forced to believe in.
这不是一个抽象的理论，一个佛教徒被强迫着相信这样的理论，不是的。
Like, if we had to travel to Nepal this year, let's just say, we would see a sign at our gate at the Delhi airport or any airport saying Kathmandu, right?
那假设我们今年要旅行去尼泊尔，在机场的登机门，你会看到一个指示牌，上面写着加德满都，对吗？
So if we know the sign on the screen at our gate saying Kathmandu is a direction, not a destination.
我们知道登机门的那个加德满都指示牌是个方向说明而已，不是真正的目的地。
Similarly, these topics in Buddha Dharma for us is to study, is us to reflect on them, then meditate deeply on it if we want to actually practice. If we want to actually achieve our goal.
那同样的，如果我们想要修行，想要达成目标，佛法里这些部分是让我们学习思维，然后深刻的禅修于此的。
So this affliction is a reality to be observed in the mind. We're talking about mental attachment.
这个烦恼是实际存在在我们内心要去观察的。我们讲的是心理上的执着。
There's a process that's described by the Buddha very clearly for our contemplation.
佛陀非常清楚地描述了一个过程，是我们可以思
When
维
he
的。
first taught the four Aryan truths, the Buddha used the Sanskrit word Trishna, which means thirsting.
佛陀首次开示四圣谛时，用了一个梵文词汇 Tishna， 意思是渴望、可爱。
He actually said that in Varanasi, when the hot season was becoming the monsoon season.
他说法时是在瓦拉纳西，当时是炎热的旱季，正在转向雨季的时候。
So when it's that hot outside, thirsting is not an abstract idea. It's very direct reality.
天气很热的时候，渴就不是一个抽象的概念，而是非常直接的实际。
Now, there's three kinds of thirsting that the Buddha taught in the 12 links of dependent co-arising.
佛陀在12缘起的教法中说，可爱有3种。
So the first is thirsting desire, which means thirsting for sensory stimuli, and as well as, what we all ordinarily experience.
第一种是欲爱，意思是对感官刺激的渴望，我们一般对此都有经验。
The ones like, such as wanting to see visual objects we like, and not wanting to look at visual objects that we don't like. And so on, through the ears, nose, tongue, body, and the mind, the dualistic conceptual mind.
例如想要看到喜欢的视觉对象，不想看到不喜欢的，通过眼耳鼻舌身意的直取，那这里的意指的是二元分别心的这个心意。
Then there's thirsting for becoming, thirsting for existence.
第二种是有爱，是对有的渴望，对存在的渴望。
Then there's thirsting to not exist, to not become anything, which is nihilism.
第三种是无有爱，即渴望不存在，希望不存在，属于断见。
So that thirsting acts as a causal condition for us to cling, to compulsively cling very strongly to that goal of that thirsting, and that clinging is what keeps us holding into this samsara.
可爱是直取的因缘，我们被迫强烈的直取那种可爱的对象，这种直取把我们牢牢的拴在这个
Or
轮
rather,
回里，
it stops us of letting go.
拴在轮回里，它不让我们放下。
So that clinging then acts as a causal condition for us to be reborn in samsara.
而这个直取是我们投身在轮回里的因缘。
So this can result in rebirth in the desire realm, Kamadhatu.
那
Kamadhatu, which means that the physical existence, such as the human realm, where we are distinguished by the biological desires as well as the active mental attachments.
结果我们会投身在欲界，欲界是有形体的存在，例如人道有生物性的欲望以及活跃的精神上的
Or
执
in
着。
in the lower realms where the suffering is so much worse.
或者是投身恶道，在那里受的苦要更大，
Alternatively,
大得多。
it could actually lead to rebirth into the two higher realms. The Rupa Dhatu and the Arupa Dhatu, which is the realm of divine, divine form and formless realm, formless divine realm, he says, respectfully.
或者也可能导致我们投身善道，色界和无色界，这些都属于天道，分别是有色身和无色身的天
So
界。
whichever of the three realms, whichever it is, even if it's as formless divine being, the rebirth has a cause, and it's still conditioned and it's still impermanent.
无论三界中的哪一界，哪怕是投身做无色界的天神，也是有因的，也是关带
Even
因
the
缘的，
highest
也还是
rebirth,
无
the
常的。
highest rebirth in samsara, which can be the divine state for eons and eons and eons, is not real. It's not a real rest from samsara, because there is no development of the Dharma in that state.
哪怕是在轮回最高的无色界精节安住，也不是真正离开轮回休息了，因为那里没有
So
佛法修
thirsting
行。
and attachment don't strike us as so much of as a problem as other emotions, because we chase our desires. We chase our desires in pursuit of happiness.
那可爱和执着跟其他烦恼比起来，我们不觉得它是个问题，因为我们追逐欲望，追逐快乐。
But that is the very reason, that the Buddha said in his very first teaching that it was such a big problem.
正是因为这个原因，佛陀在第一次开示中就提到它，说它是个巨大的问题。
That our thirsting doesn't take us to true lasting happiness, to true lasting satisfaction, and so on. In fact, it's the cause of keeping us in here, in the samsara.
我们的可爱不会带领我们真正获得永恒的满足和快乐，反而其实是把我们困在轮回里的原因。
So whereas attachment moves on towards an object, the second poisonous affliction moves away from it,
烦恼
moves one away from it.
烦恼五毒的第二个是嗔，贪是让我们靠近对象，嗔是让我们远离对象。
Because one doesn't like it for whatever reason, fear, pain, offense, aversion, and so on and so forth.
因为不喜欢或者是恐惧、痛苦、冒犯、厌恶、反感等等原因。
And that is dvesha, aggression.
这就是嗔、dvesha、嗔怒、嗔恨。
Aggression is the mental movement to push away, and almost all the time it means hurting someone else.
嗔是一种推开的心理动作，通常都意味着会伤害别人。
And the number one victim of that hurt is ourselves. It's ourselves, because aggression immediately brings us tension.
这种伤害的受害者首先是我们自己，因为嗔怒立刻会给自己造成紧张。
It clouds our vision. It pushes everyone away indiscriminately, because no one wants to be around aggression.
它遮住我们的视野，把每个人都推开，不加分别的推开，因为没有人想要靠近嗔怒。
So none of us want to be subject to anyone else's physical or verbal aggression.
没有一个人想要承受别人身体和语言上的嗔。
So the only way that physical and verbal aggressiveness can be prevented or can be stopped is by counteracting mental aggression.
阻止身和语方面的嗔，唯一的办法是对治意方面的嗔。
The first two afflictions arise due to our, misconceptions, our active misconceptions about the way things really are.
前两种烦恼贪和嗔是由于对事物真相的误解而产生的。
For example,
例如
we thirst for something mistakenly thinking that, it will make us happy when it doesn't.
我们渴望某种东西，是因为误以为它会给我们带来快乐，但其实它不会。
And we say something aggressive, mistakenly thinking that it will get rid of the problem or the person that has upset us, when actually it just brings us more tension and it brings us more pain, more negative consequences.
我们说出嗔怒的话，是因为错误的以为这会解决问题或者人，但其实只会造成更多紧张、
So
痛苦、
that
更多后果。
active misconceiving is moha, delusion.
这种起作用的误解呢，就是第三种烦恼痴 moha 愚痴的痴，
which makes us act, which makes us speak in ways that, that get us into a lot of trouble, no end of trouble.
愚痴驱动着我们的行为和语言，给我们带来很多麻烦，无尽的麻烦。
Fourth is mana, pride.
那第四种是慢 mana 傲慢。
There are 7 different kinds of pride, described in was described by Vasubandhu in the Abhidharma Kosha.
世亲菩萨在阿毗达摩俱舍论里面说了7种慢，
But in essence, it's the affliction that props up and, enforces a fragile sense of self. Whether to be validated in others' eyes, or satisfy our own root pride of self, unchecked self-grasping.
但是从本质上说，慢这种烦恼支持和增强着一种脆弱的自我，要在别人眼中得到肯定，或者是满足自己一种根本的不加约束的我执，这样的傲慢。
So the fifth is Ishya, jealousy.
第5个是嫉妒，
Which instead of feeling glad, instead of rejoicing in others' good fortune and happiness, causes us to resent, causes us to covet it.
对于他人的福报和快乐，不是随喜，不感到欢喜，而是感到愤恨，或者是垂涎贪图。
But of course, jealousy doesn't bring us anywhere close to happiness.
嫉妒当然不会让我们靠近任何快乐，
It just makes us feel bitter. It just makes us feel unhappy.
只能让我们仇恨、痛苦，更加不快乐。
Now, generally speaking, we talk about different methods to counteract these afflictions directly in meditation.
一般而言，我们说禅修里有不同的方法可以直接对治这些烦恼。
Such as rejoicing and cultivating gladness in others' good fortune to counteract jealousy, and
例如对治嫉妒，可以修行随喜，培养对他人福报的喜悦之情，来对治嫉妒。
and others, like cultivating loving kindness for aggression and so on and so forth.
修行慈心来对治嗔心等等。
So in this text though, what we're doing is relying on one method to deal with all of these afflictions, bodhichitta.
在这个教文里，我们依靠唯一一个法门来对治所有这些烦恼，那就是菩
So
提
this is
心。
a form of a special Mahayana mind training, a Mahayana mind training exchange practice that we call tonglen, taking and giving.
那就是菩提心。那这是大乘修心法门的一种特别形式，叫做自他交换法，tonglen。
In other systems, this is done as a visual meditation in tandem with the breathing.
那别的法脉的自他交换法有伴随着呼吸以观想的方式来进行的。
In others, we do it repeatedly. By repeating a couple of lines as a kind of a prayer that focuses and that targets the effects of suffering.
另一些则是反复持诵某些祈请文的句针
So
对的主
in
要
this
是苦
one,
果。
the prayer targets the cause of suffering, which is the afflictions.
那这个教文的祈请词句针对的却是苦因，也就是烦恼。
In exchange for the cause of temporary and ultimate happiness, which is virtue and the absolute bodhichitta of transcendental wisdom.
取受的是苦因烦恼，给予的是暂时和究竟的快乐之因，也就是善德以及出世间智慧的圣意菩提心。
So understanding this, we undertake this practice by bringing even more, even the slightest trace of afflictive emotions, and their effects on our body and mind into full awareness.
理解这一点，我们修持这个修法，对哪怕最细微的丝毫的烦恼，对它对我们身心的影响，
And
都具有
not knowing-
全然的觉知。
knowing how they are, and how they are the cause of our suffering, we directly apply it to the relative aspiring bodhicitta.
全然的觉知，知道他们是如何，知道他们是怎么成为苦因，直接以世俗菩提心的愿菩提心来对
And
治它。
reflecting through this prayer that we yearn for all sentient beings to be free from sickness, to be free from fighting, free from poverty, all pain.
反映在这篇愿文上，就是我们渴望让众生摆脱疾病、斗争、贫穷，所有痛苦。
So may this negativity all ripen on me. I will take it.
所以我们说，愿这恶果都成熟在我身上，由我来取受。
And by doing that, the power of our great compassion, and clear understanding purifies the mind stream of the afflictive, the afflictions.
通过这么做，我们大悲心的力量和明晰的智慧，能够净除心相续当中的烦恼。
In other words, no matter what the defilements are, no matter what disturbance, to the mind, it's all fuel for compassion.
换句话说，无论什么样的染污，什么样的心理的烦恼，都是悲心的
It's
燃
all
料、
for
动力燃
drawing
料。
out the causes for suffering from all sentient beings, and purifying it with our own practice of bodhichitta.
就好像从一切众生身上抽取所有苦因，用自己菩提心的修行来净化它。
So that's the taking part. Taking and giving. So that's the taking part of the tonglen. Next comes the giving.
这就是自他交换法中的取受部分，接下来是给予部分。
So just as afflictive emotions create stress, they create suffering, well-being and happiness also must have a cause too, right?
烦恼产生紧张，产生痛苦，一样的，健康和快乐也肯定有其原因，对吗？
And that is virtue, the positive, wholesome states, qualities, so on.
那就是善，是积极的善的状态或者功德。
Generally, we talk about the fundamental virtue in Buddhism being the body, speech, and mind.
一般在佛教里，我们说根本的善分身语意三个部分。
In terms of this body, this means refraining from violence, refraining from theft, refraining from sexual misconduct.
身的部分是不杀生、不偷盗、不邪淫。
In terms of speech, we avoid deceitful speech, abusive speech, divisive speech, unskillful speech.
语的部分是不妄语、不绮语、不两舌、不恶口。
In terms of mind, we abandon ill will, covetousness, and wrong views, such as thinking that there's no consequences to harming others and so on.
意的部分是摒弃贪欲、嗔恚和邪见。邪见是例如认为伤害他人没有后果之类的，是邪见。
As our ethical commitment, this holistic approach to the basics of living wholesomely means we're not haunted by guilt. Guilt, and we're not haunted by guilt, and we're uplifted. We're uplifted by the foundations for how we live our lives.
那持守这些戒行，用这种全面的方法打造一个健康的生活方式作为基础，我们就不会被悔恨困扰，就有一个良善的生活方式作为基础，作为支撑。
This means that if or when we make mistakes or bring into mind a mistake done sometime before, our commitment urges us to use Dharma practice to purify it and enhance the power of our inner goodness.
这意味着当我们犯错的时候，或是想起以前犯的错的时候，戒律会督促我们利用佛法修行来清净它、净化它，并且增强内心的善的力
So
量。
this is the foundation, and it's so important. But in those terms, we're talking about the virtue qualified by what we're not doing.
那这就是基础，非常重要。但是这些讨论的都是以不做什么为标准的善行。
Like not being violent, not saying things that are hurtful, not saying things like, that's to split friends apart, to not acting out thoughts, wishing to harm someone else, someone who we get annoyed with, and so on and so
例如
forth.
不杀生、不恶口、不两舌、不因嗔恚而伤害我们不喜欢的人等等。
Now that already has a lot of power, which is why it's so important. But what about the virtue qualified by what we actually do?
这已经很有力量了，所以它是至关重要的。那么还有什么善行是以做什么为标
So in
准的
this
善
case,
行呢？
we bring to mind the activities of body, speech, mind that build merit.
在这一点上，我们能想到的是，能积累福德的身语意的行为。
Particularly merit that we dedicate to enlightenment.
尤其是回向正悟的功德。
For example,
例如，
when we want to commit to bodhichitta, deciding to do something that is so meaningful and positive with our lives.
当我们想要承诺持守菩提心，决定用我们的人生来做一些有意义的事、积极的事，
we do practices like making offerings to the Triple Gem.
我们会做一些像供养三宝之类的修行。
We do things like showing respect to our guru,
尊敬上师，
showing reverence to the sangha, and providing some kind of what do you call Dharma for the elementals, even by small contribution to the monasteries, carrying out the rituals and so on.
礼敬僧伽，例如给布多布施食子，例如哪怕只是给开法会的寺庙一点小小的随喜。
We make bodhichitta heartfelt. We make it authentic. We make it, not just lip service. We purify our view of wisdom.
我们让菩提心是由衷的、真实的，不是嘴上说而已的。
And
我
we
们
make
亲近对智慧的
extensive
见地，
daily dedications.
亲近对智慧的见地，每天广泛的回向功德。
In other words, we try to practice bodhichitta in our daily lives and employ the methods that will support it, and which builds up, an uninterrupted stream of the highest virtues.
换句话说，我们试着在日常生活中修持菩提心，用各种方法来支持它，打造一个殊胜的善德的流序，持续不
So
断。
if we live our lives with such an outlook, such a commitment, such a fullness, then it's something we bring to attention.
如果我们以这种观点、这种承诺、这种圆满来过我们的人生，那这是我们应该注意到的。
And we know this goodness. We feel this goodness.
我们了解这个善，我们能够感受这个善。
This is not something that we do. This is not something just not just something that we do on a cushion, cross-legged.
这不是盘
We can do this no matter whatever we're doing, where we are.
这不是盘腿坐在禅修垫上才能做的事。我们无论在哪里做什么，都
Every
可以
time
去
we
做。
do this positive, this uplifting, these uplifting things, every time we feel that goodness. Even every time we simply don't hurt someone by what we do or say, we take that virtue and dedicate it to the temporal and ultimate happiness of all sentient beings.
每次我们做善事，每次感受到这个善，哪怕只是不在行为和言语上伤害别人，我们都可以把这个善回向给一切众生，暂时和
Now,
究竟
this
的
does
安
not
乐。
mean that we're beating ourselves up and throwing away the seeds for a very distant goal or something that will leave us adrift in the ocean of samsara worse than ever. No.
这不意味着我们
Not at
是
all.
在苛求自己，把种子撒向一个遥不可及的目标，自己却只能绝望地漂流在轮回大海里，不是这样的。
So dedicating our roots of virtue to the enlightenment of all sentient beings not only brings about others' welfare, but it also brings our own welfare too.
把善根回向给一切众生的证悟，不仅能利益他人，也能利益我们自己。
And not as some remote, distant idea, of enlightenment.
证悟不是一个遥远的、缥缈的概念。
If we think that way, actually we are grasping. We're grasping at a self, at an unenlightened identity that, imagine gets us, enlightened way down on the line, in the future.
如果我们这么想的话，我们其实是在执着，是在执取一个我，一个还没证悟的身份存在，想象着能让这个未开悟的众生在遥远的未来得到证悟。
But let's let's let go of that grasping.
让我们放下这种执着。
Let's relax from that habit of fixating on an idea of something and awaken to the present.
让我们从仅仅执着于某个概念的习气当中放松下来，在当下醒来。
Liberation and enlightenment they're not in the past, they're not in the future or anywhere out there.
解脱和证悟不在过去，不在未来，也不在外界的任何地方。
Waking up is here and now.
醒悟就在现在，就在当下。
Therefore, the key to our peace and happiness, to the peace and happiness of all sentient beings, is right here and right now.
所以我们的安乐，一切众生的安乐，其关键就在当下。
There is no more effective key to, opening the door to that peace, to that happiness, than bodhichitta.
要打开这安乐的大门，没有比菩提心更有效的钥匙了。
No better one than that great compassion, which aspires to bring all sentient beings.
没有比大悲心更有效的了，也就是发愿让一切众生证悟之心。
In other words, to be more happy, to be more peaceful and free and, selfishness will only take us to the opposite direction.
换句话说，要更快乐、更平静、更自由，自私只会把我们推到相反方向去。
But bodhichitta will always take us closer and closer to realizing our aspirations.
但菩提心总是会让我们离实现愿心越来越近。
So when we talk about all sentient beings, now that's not about just humans and animals.
我们说一切众生，不只包括人类和动物。
In the recollection of the Buddha that we recite in the festival prayers, we recite that the Buddha is the teacher of the divine and human.
在先行节祈请文里的随念三宝经，我们念诵说佛陀是天人师，就是天神和人的导师。
So even though this is a description of realms outside of the ordinary perceptible material world,
所以虽然六道不是一般
as we have
的
already
物质宇宙，
explored, our karma can take us to destinations beyond what we ordinarily see, right now in this life.
虽然六道不是一般意义上理解的物质宇宙，但是如前所说，我们的业会推着我们前往超越此生能看见、能理解的地方。
So we talk about divine realms, the Deva realms, the realms of the Asuras, the demigods,
所以我们说有天道、阿修罗道。
and within the desire realm, and there's human realm, there's animal realm, the Preta, hungry ghost realm, and the 18 major and branch hell realms.
在欲界里还有人道、畜生道、恶鬼道、18地狱，包括主要和支分的18个地狱。
So it is karma that takes us in the direction of those realms.
是业推动我们前往这些道。
But karma is not fate. It's not a destiny ordained by some powerful being, a god or something, or something random.
但业不是命运，不是某些强大的神、众生或者是物体决定的命运，也不是随机的东西。
Karma comes from our own intentions.
业来自我们自己的意愿或者说发心。
So if our intentions and therefore our karma are driven by afflictive emotions, then
如果我们的发心，我们的业是受烦恼驱动的。
For example, anger leads to a hellish existence. Greed to the Preta realm, and so on and so
例如说，
forth.
嗔恨心会让人投身地狱，贪婪会让人投身恶鬼道。
Then we can't hope to free all sentient beings from the result of suffering and dissatisfaction out there without removing the causes in here.
如果不清除内心的因，就不能指望能度脱外界的一切众生，远离苦果，远离不满足的果。
So for that reason, we integrate the purification of every kind of afflictive emotion, such as the main five. The main five we have we looked at here, into the exchange practice of bodhichitta.
正因为如此，那清除烦恼，例如刚才说的五毒的清除，我们把它结合到菩提心的自他交换法的修持里面。
Which is an incredibly effective way to attain our minds and fulfill our goals.
是修心和达成我们目标的行之有效的办法。
As it says here, we're not favoring just the people we care about in this life.
正如这里所说，我们不是只偏爱此生我们关心的
We're not
人，
just favoring about just the people of our own community. We're not, or even just humans and animals that we see right now. But we're talking about all sentient beings equally.
不是只偏爱自己周围的人能看见的人和动物。我们说的是
Which
平
means
等
we
的一切
must
众生，
purify all the afflictions equally too.
平等的一切众生。这意味着我们也要平等的清除一切烦恼。
All our virtues are a power we can use. But to be truly liberating, to be a really truly liberating power that can purify the causal afflictions, we must apply the wisdom. We must apply wisdom into reality.
所有善根都是我们能使用的力量，但要让它能够真正成为让人解脱的力量，让它能净化烦恼之因，我们必须运用智慧。
We have to free ourselves from the confines of all avidya, of all misknowing.
我们必须让自己从所有无明的牢笼中解脱出来。
Which is why it says virtues free from attachment and the rest of the defilements.
所以
As they can only be purified at the root through the ultimate bodhichitta of wisdom.
所以这里说离与贪等烦恼之诸善，平等散布六道诸有情。因为要从根本上净化染污，只能通过圣意菩
Now
提
the
心
next
的
verse,
智慧。
moving on. By the karmic fruition of suffering such as sickness, that and similar kinds of suffering without exception must be drawn out. Whatever benefits and bliss free from sickness and such like that there is, shall be constantly distributed to the sentient beings of the six destinations.
那下一个寄送，并等业果转化之苦痛，即类似苦，无余尽拔出，无论何种无病等利乐，恒常散布六道诸有情。
So we have looked at karmic causes and the full spectrum of karmic ripening in samsara as a basis for, training the mind in bodhicitta.
我们已经讨论了业因和业成熟的一系列后果，投身于轮回各处等等，这些是修心和菩提心的基础。
Here, we're looking at the more immediate karmic results that, we experience in this life.
这个寄送说的是更快速成熟的业果，此生就受报的业果。
In all our daily lives, but with exactly the same full scope, which is which is vital that we understand and take to heart.
是在我们日常生活中的，但是范围也是一样的完整，对它理解和用心去记取非常重要。
Sickness and so on, here refers to the first three of the four sights that Siddhartha Gautama saw while still as a prince in Kapilavastu, that then caused him to set out on the path to Bodhi.
经颂里说病等业果，这里指的是乔达摩悉达多太子在迦毗罗卫城看到的，让他后来踏上菩提道的4个景象之中的前3者。
So, old age, sickness, and death.
是老、病、死，这3个。
In other descriptions in the sutras, the Buddha described these as the inescapable physical sufferings that we all undergo along with being born.
在其他地方，在佛经中，佛陀将这3者描述成所有人只要出生就无法逃脱的身体痛苦。
And then the mental sufferings such as sorrow, despair, and so on.
还有精神痛苦，例如悲伤、绝望等等。
Naturally, we all want to be healthy. We don't want disease. We don't want pain. We want to laugh. We want to laugh. We don't want to cry.
我们都自然而然的想要健康，不想生病，不想要痛苦，想要开怀大笑，不想痛哭流涕。
We want fulfillment, not loss and deprivation.
我们想要圆满，不想要损失，不想要贫乏。
And all sentient beings feel exactly the same. But samsara doesn't ever afford us that fulfillment that we want.
一切众生的感觉都是同样的，但是轮回不会尽如人意。
We all have to face the inevitability of pain, of loss, of sickness, and the rest.
我们都必须面对无可避免的痛苦、损失、疾病等等。
So in our daily lives, whatever the unfavorable conditions that we have to face, again and again, we don't just sigh, we just go, oh, that's an obstacle, to our own well-being and liberation. No.
那在日常生活中，无论我们一次次面对什么样的逆境，我们也不应该唉声叹气，说啊，这就是障碍啊，就是健康的障碍、解脱的障碍啊，不能这样。
Rather, we use our experience to develop bodhichitta.
而是要利用这些经历来培养菩提心。
In terms of our scope, we wish to draw out, the suffering of all sentient beings, of the 6
根据
realms.
自己的能力，我们希望拔除6道众
And
生
in
之
terms of
苦
the。suffering of the lower realms, there's always much, much worse.
6道众生之苦中，恶道的苦要严重的多。
No one in a group of humans or animals or any sentient beings is any more important than another.
无论是人、动物还是任何众生，没有谁比其他众生更重要。
But human life is by far the most, advantageous for cultivating the Dharma path, which is why we must be determined to make the most of it, to do whatever we can to help others through the Dharma.
但对修行法道来说，人类的生命是最有利的，所以我们必须下决心，充分利用人生，尽自己所能，通过佛法来帮助其他众生。
So wishing to take the disease, take the deprivation, the depression, and all the rest away from all sentient beings, whatever challenges we may experience, we reflect that this is our chance to develop bodhichitta.
我们希望去除一切众生的疾病、贫穷、抑郁和所有痛苦，无论遇到什么困难，都要思维这是我们修行菩提心的大好机会。
reflecting that we have so many advantages, we have so many comforts, so many chances for bliss. So we want to use this opportunity. We want to use that to give all happiness to others.
我们要思维，我们拥有这么多优势、舒适的条件、喜乐的机缘，所以我们想要利用这个机会，把一切安乐给予其他众
It
生。
says constantly here. Constantly, because not only do we need to train our minds in this way every day as much as we can, it needs to use our everyday experience. Not just when we are formally meditating.
这里恒常散步六道诸有情，用恒常这个词，是因为我们每天不仅仅要尽可能去修行，而且要利用日常生活的经历，
So when Maitri
而不
Yogi
仅仅是正式禅
said
修的
this
时候。
prayer, no doubt, he was urging himself to make the most of his precious human life by cultivating bodhichitta every day, in every way.
所以当慈氏瑜伽士吟诵这个愿文的时候，毫无疑问，他是在督促自己利用他自己的珍贵人生修行菩提心，每一天以各种方式修行菩提心。
So as it follows, what chance is there for me to roam even momentarily in this ocean of samsara if I do thus? Nevertheless, for as long as Bodhi has not been attained, as many results from the cause of afflictions that are to be experienced shall all be completely finished in this lifetime.
下一个寄诵：若如是行尚有何机缘，刹那沉沦于此轮回海，然则直至未证菩提前，便尝种种烦恼之因果，此生应当圆满尽了结。
So this shows the determination we need.
这表明了我们需要的决心。
If we put our energy, if we put our focus into bodhichitta, which means that, developing the merit and wisdom that will result in perfectly complete Buddha.
如果我们把精力和专注力放在
Definitely,
菩提
we
心
won't
上，
stray into negative emotions or harmful ways for even a second.
如果我们把精力和专注力放在菩提心上，那就意味着为了获得圆满正觉佛果、积累福德和智慧，我们当然就一刻也不会迷失于负面情绪或者有害的道路之上。
Definitely, we'll go through the bodhisattva stages and paths and not wander, in dissatisfaction anymore.
我们就一定会历经菩萨的五道十地，不再漂泊在轮回之苦、轮回
So
的不满
until we
足。
reach the full and final goal, we can't delay or be careless.
直到我们圆满达到最终目标之前，我们不能拖延耽搁，不能漫不经心。
We must integrate everything we experience onto the path as more and more fuel for bodhichitta.
我们必须把我们经历的一切都结合到法道之上，作为菩提心的越来越多的燃料。
And to get to the root by facing the afflictive emotions in our own minds and being determined to purify them in this very lifetime.
直击根源，直面内心的烦恼，决心此生就尽除这些烦恼。
Continuing, says, they shall even be drawn out this year and this month. They shall even be finished today at this very moment. So relying on the singular method to totally cut the most minor sufferings, may this mind be trained, Maitri Yogi.
继续读寄诵，今年今月即当尽拔除，今日此刻即当尽了结，依此一法，微苦亦斩断，愿修此心，此是瑜伽士。
We need this kind of resolve, this kind of determination. But we also need a sensible perspective.
我们需要这种决心，但也要有合情合理的展望。
When we face obstacles, we can't weaken our resolve to develop bodhichitta by being disheartened.
当我们面对障碍时，不能灰心丧气，削弱修行菩提心的决心。
Thinking that due to getting angry or a bit jealous or saying something that might have been a bit proud, that no way can we do this to the level that we aspire anymore. No, rather we feel the opposite.
那觉得自己由于嗔怒或者有点嫉妒，或者说了可能有点傲慢的话，那我们就不可能做到发愿时所展望的那种程度了。不是这样，我们的感受应该完全相反。
This affliction has arisen. Well, that's what I have to do to work with it then.
我们应该是觉得，好吧，这烦恼是有其原因的，那我就必须面对它，处理它。
It's the cause of stress. But love and compassion are the sources of all, to benefit all and bliss.
这烦恼是苦因，是紧张的原因，但慈悲心是一切利乐之源。
Ripen here and now on me.
慈悲心是一切利乐之源，所以愿所有这样的烦恼都以此时此地在我身上成熟。
Bringing healing, bringing happiness, bringing liberation to all sentient beings.
把所有美好的功德、疗愈、快乐、解脱都带给一切众生。
So we must we must practice, like that, directly, as it says in the second line.
所以我们必须这样直接去修，正如第二句所说：“今日此刻即当尽了结。”
But when we recognize that more method and wisdom need to be worked on in order to aid or development of such radical mind training, then, well, as it says in the first line, we give ourselves the time to work on that.
但当我们认识到，为了要促成这样根本性的修行，需要培养更多的方便和智慧，那我们就如第一句所说的那样，今年今月即当尽拔处，给自己足够的时间来慢慢培养。
We're relying on a singular method that, like I said before, bodhichitta.
我们依靠的是唯一的法门，就是菩提心。
But we also have to study. We have to study. We have to contemplate. We have to meditate to make sure that it can overcome the causes and the effect of even the most minor suffering, as it says over here in the third line.
但我们也要通过闻思修来确保能断除哪怕最细微的痛苦的因果，正如第三句所说：“依此一法，微苦亦斩断。”
So tomorrow we will explore those resources in a more detail.
明天我们会探究更多的细节。
Okay, but now the fourth line, see, it says this mind. Now, which means our mind in the present moment.
那第四句他说此心指的是当下此刻的自心。
But then the author seems to be, he seems to address himself as a self-encouragement.
此事瑜伽是作者似乎是在对自己言语，作为
However,
自我鼓
there is
励。
no reason that we can say that, that line with equal power, because actually Maitri means loving kindness.
然而没有理由说我们不能以同样的力量来念诵这一句，因为其实 Maitri 就是
Maitri yogi, Maitri loving kindness. Yogi means, one who practices, practices that with diligence and dedication.
Magic Yogi 就是慈心 ，Yogi 就是瑜伽士，精进修行
So
的人，
we can
所以
say
慈是
that
瑜
these
伽士。
verses ourselves and become definition on a Maitri Yogi, of a Maitri Yogi ourselves.
我们自己念诵这个偈颂，我们自己也可以被定为慈氏瑜伽士。
So we will continue with the text tomorrow, and we're going to take a short break now before we recite our prayers together.
我们明天继续讲这篇教文，现在短暂休息一下，再回来一起念诵祈请文。
नमः सर्वबुद्ध बोधिसत्तेभ्यः इत्यपि बुद्धो भगवान् तथागतो अरहन् सम्यक् सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरण सम्पन्नः सुगतो लोकविदनुत्तरः पुरुषोत्तमसारथिः शास्तादेव मनुष्याणां बुद्धो भगवानिति निश्चन्दः स तथागतः पुण्यानां विप्रणाशः कुशलमूलानाम् अलङ्कृतः शान्त्यालयः पुण्यानिधानानाम् चिक्रितो अनुव्यञ्जनैः कुसुमितो लक्षणैः प्रतिरूपो गोचरेण अप्रतिकूलो दर्शनेन अभिरति श्रद्धादिमुक्तानाम् अनभिभूतः प्रज्ञाया अनावामर्दनीयो बलैः शास्त्र सर्वसत्त्वानां पिता बोधिसत्त्वानां राजा आर्यपुत्कलानां साधावान् निर्वाणनगर सम्प्रस्थितानां प्रमेयो ज्ञानेन अचिन्त्यः प्रतिभानेन विशुद्धः स्वरेण आस्वादनीयो घोषेण असेचको रूपेण अप्रतिसवाकायेन अलिप्तकामैः अनुपलिप्तो रूपैः असंश्लिष्ट आरूपैः विप्रमुक्त स्कन्धेभ्यः विसम्प्रयुक्तो धातुः सम्प्रेत आयतनैः प्रचिन्नो ग्रन्थैः विमुक्तः परिधानैः परिमुक्तस्तस्या ओघादुत्तीर्णः परिपूर्णो ज्ञानेन प्रतिष्ठितो अतीत अनागत प्रत्युत्पन्नानां बुद्धानां भगवतां ज्ञाने अप्रतिष्ठितो निर्वाणे स्थितो भूतकोट्यां स्थितः सर्वस्वतलोकनीयायां भूमौ सर्व इमे तथागतानां विशेषतः सम्यक् गुणाः Saddharmastu adau kalyana madhye kalyana paryasane kalyana swartha subhanjana kevala paripurna parishuddha parayadata swakya Dharma Sandrishtika Nirjvara Akalika Aupanayika Aihipashika Pratyatma Vedaniyo Vikyaya Swakyato Bhagavato Dharma Vinaya Supravedita Nainanika Sambodhikami avinna samstuva svate shara chinna plotika supratipanno bhagavata arya sangha nyaya pratipanna rejo pratipanna Samichi pratipannaha anjali karaniya Samichi karaniya punyasi kshetraha Mahadakshina parishodhaka prahavaniya ahavaniya Arya triratna nusmiti sutram Samaptam Om Namo Bhagavate Arya Pragyaparamitaye Arya Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Gambhiraya Pragyaparamitaye Saramano Devalokiti Sma Panchai Skandha Tamsa Swabhava Sunyan Pashyati Sma Iha Sariputra Rupam Sunyata Sunyataiva Rupam Rupam Naprita Sunyata Sunyataya na prithak rupam yad rupam sa shunyata ya shunyata tad rupam ekam eva vedana samjya samskara vijnanani iham Sariputra sarva dharma sunyata lakshana Anutrapanna aniruddha Amala na bimala Nona na paripurna Tasma Chariputra Shunyatayam na rupam Na vedana na samjya Na samskara na vijnanani Na jachu srotra rana Jihakayam anamasi Narupa Shabda Gandha Vyasa Spashtabhya Dharma Nachakshu Dhatur Yavanna Mano Dhatu Navidya 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 Chayo Navidya Chayo Yavanna Jara Maranam Jara Marana Chayo Na Dukha Samudaya Nirodha Marga Na Jnanam Na Prapti Tasmada Prapti Dvar Bodhisattvanam Prajya Paramitam Asitya Viharati Chitta Varana Chitta Varana Nasti Dvatarastro Viparaya Sadikranto निष्ठा निर्वाणः तद्भयं व्यवस्थिताः सर्वबुद्धाः प्रज्ञापारमिता आश्रित्य अनुत्तरां सम्यक् सम्बोधि सम्बुद्धाः तस्मात् ज्ञातव्यः प्रज्ञापारमिता महामन्त्रो महाविद्यामन्त्रो अनुत्तरमन्त्रो असमासमन्त्रः सर्वदुःखप्रशमनः सत्यम् अमिथ्यात्वात् प्रज्ञापारमिताया मुक्तो मन्त्रः तद्यथा गते गते पारगते पारसंगते बोधे स्वाहा तद्यथा गते गते पारगते पारसंगते बोधे स्वाहा तद्यथा गते गते पारगते पारसंगते बोधे स्वाहा इति प्रज्ञापारमिता हृदयसूत्रम् समाप्तम्
The Recollection of the Triple Gem, page number 18.
आज फेरि पनि पहिलो पाठमा त्रिरत्न अनुस्मृति नेपालीमा रहेको पृष्ठ सङ्ख्या 17 मा हेरिदिनु होला।
随念三宝经第12页。
同时见报瓦扎宗南无三界正遍念念对谢切波照中国扬道波左边三界里瓦达相苏念波丢了切波吉天见波结波对边高罗有瓦达那灭波拉达灭南界念瓦三界正遍念
The Praise of the 12 Deeds. Turn to page 37.
यस पश्चात द्वादश अथवा पहारा बोधिकृति नेपालीमा रहेको पृष्ठ सङ्ख्या 33
佛陀12行仪礼赞文第31页。
Thank you. The praise of the 1,000 Buddhas of the fortunate Aeon. Turn to page 64.
अब यस पश्चात सहस्रिक अथवा हजार बुद्धको स्तुति नेपालीमा रहेको पृष्ठ संख्या 55
贤劫千佛礼赞文第53页。
Continuing the next page, the litany of the epithets of Aya Manjushri.
अब यस पश्चात नाम संगीति नेपालीमा रहेको पृष्ठ संख्या 56
文殊真实明经第54页。
Jamba Jana Yubala Jala Dile Bale Doje Chang Dugan Dugan Namye Sho Pawa Jine Somle Ya Doje Wanju Samle Ya Beman Kagla Jine Je Beman Yebe Tema Jo Lage Doje Cho Yanda Yando Suje Ba Chanye Ringa Dela So Lama Doje Taye Ba Bawa Dura Dua Bo Jesu Runda Ba Jeje Doje Zemo Rakcho Ba Lage Suje Nije Chedan Cheradan Dajen Kadan Chebejo Gago Range Samba Je Chove Luje Sodemba Sage Jinle Chebege Lede Namda Lejedo Deje Shema Jumdende Zosan Gela Shazane Kamo Jawa Jinene Jema Dude Degezo Kaba Dala Membada Dade Dala Duzeje Yurjo Jawa Nyansange Chanjo Jine Dadozu Nyamon Dele Senjoje Mishe Damdo Jewaye Semje Gala Membada Lame Jebo Dosheje Zobe Sanje Jumnende Jore Lama Dembabo Tamze Jembo Denyeje Wambo Samba Chenjoge Jumnende Je Isheko Zulu Jembo Segeda Ishe Gude Ranjongwa Jamba Ishe Sembaye Mene Yama Jebe Jo Dezan Dene Jashishi Deje Zome Rashewa Toma Badan Tagewa Debe Sanje Namje So Mao Namje Sunjola Tada Jode Zosange Yanda Yando Somanga Yirje Gyurjo Dawale Doje Chanje Samaja Pame Namje Kashendo Dolan Kala Shedozo Gombo Zosange Genge Sanje Jine Dagyoje Nirva Junge Badune Dagye Samba Dembuson Nirva Male Sawatan Mishe Male Pambeche Sambe Jeva Jishendo Simje 萨 samye chenpo tingzene, shera chenpo lui chawa, topo chela tojewa, pela ishe janzote, chamche rangshe bakdome, nije chenpo lo yechu, shera chenpo lo chene, kerwa chenpo tabjewa, zuchu chenpo tabande, shuche kyapa chenpo de, zuchu chenpo chesama, tabje paro nepabo, sebe revo chenpo chon, cheshe doje chenpo chon, chabo chenpo chashoche, jiche jipra chepabo, Gombo richo chenpo de, lama sama chevechu, teba chenpo tsubane, teba chenpo tsujechu, sanje nambra namseche, doba chenpo tujele, sama chuche de chongwa, sama tsuje nanyeche, paro chenjo topa de, paro chenpa chulane, paro chenjo topa de, paro chenpa chuyezu, mungbo chojo wancho de, sacho lanye nepabo, shejo namba danyeje, shejo namba chawako, nama chepo tuje de, towa toje chalena, Pinche dene maleche, namcho wande chewako, Toma meba chomena, deshe neta namena, Debra mashe tsemecho, chige meba deshenche, Nisa mela nimede, yanda lala namrane, Dame singye dadane, Sanje kunye lanye da yi she na yi da san je ma da je me je ma cha wa me ma cha san je nam je ba bo san ye se bo tam be cho she be se jo ke ne je le jo wa se ma se je bo so je do je da je ma da do jo be da nam ga le jo ran jo wa she ra yi she me we che we che nam ra na wa che yi she na wa la me wa jo le ma me yi she jo se je chen bo ru sa wa ma jo ma da ni ma ya sa ma ja bo den che che zo do chen bo me jo zo nam ge da bo na zo de san je gen da mo bo jo zhe gen ka le mi dan de na zo so chen che ba bo che chen che ba zhang suan che re son chang wa san wan che dang zi chen bo san an zi zo wo gun jo sum chen ba te ba cho son den ba bo ye ye xiao ba nam bu lai jia zi ba chen bo do jie sha bu jie jia zhi xiao ba qie do jie ji xie ji ba xie chong ye jiao wo dong zhuo jie me zhuo ma zhuo do tan de ye me qie wa zi fa bo ha la dong jia ba xin jie xie bo ye jie jia do jie shu jie ji xie ba do jie zhao bo do jie ni zhe zhuo do jie sun bo qi do jie 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 do jie da do jie ni bo kan zhe ba me ye na ba ji ge jie da jie bo me kui su jie cha jie ha ha xie zhuo ba ye ye xie zhuo ji ga xie ge bo xie bo ge jiang jie do jie ge bo qie zhuo ba do jie sen ba jie do jie jiang bo de wa jie do jie zhang bo ga wa jie do jie hong de hong xie zhou zhen do jie da do wan do jie ra jie ma le zhe do jie gui zha do jie jie do jie jie bo yu se wa do jie pa wa me me san zha ya do jie pa wa de do jie be wa xie mi jia ba de do jie mi le jie do jie pa bu jie do jie bu ne ji gu lu se mo jie ba do jie zi do jie ni bo pa pa jie do jie zhe do pa dan de do jie jin jie jin ba de ge jia ha ha ge ba zhu yi ge zhu ba do jie zha jiang ya qian bo zha jie wa ji jie song na zha jie ba nam ge da le zha zhu ba zha da bian ba nam jie zhu yang da da le de xie ni yang da da de yi ge me do nian ma wei jue zhu de xia jie jia jie zha zhu ba shu jie dong jie zha jian de zhi jie gen jian zha bu qi mi nian yang nian de ba bu shu jie qi jie ma wu qi su me su ca dang ba de na su su jian yi le qi su na dang jie na wei ba su nian ma le xiang wa bu 从我面前切合着，告诉我做全部的，跑到心的。 Dharma Chenpo Chujedo, Jiden Soma Shuloje, Neden Genpo Jigda, Sumjo Zanye Zenchawa, Doyo Jide Sunaze, Jide Shele Lokande, Jide Lokan Jipame, Munjo Jide Yechoba, Jaba Jaba Laname, Namge Tala Moshewa, Tamje Jembe Yeshezo, Mare Munye Bujema, Sebe Tawa Jumamo, Yumo Mare Shechema, Kore Jazo Paroje, Ishe Wangre Jemenje, Zobe Sanje Jendoto, Doma Samje Doma She, Samje Pare Josondo, Jeba Gule Nyekado, Kada Nyamba Nilane, Nyamo Jema Gulende, Diso Deme Lopabo, Senje Gunje Lojebo, Yunde Daje Namjedo, Nyamo Gule Namjowa, Namge Namlara Meba, Yeshe Nogo Jembo Chan, Jada Linje Gunje Chu, Pasan Shinje Gelade, Kumba Sambo Chile Chu, Chepa Senje Gundeje, Pende Senje Yisheba, Zange Sheshe Dushema, Chanda Lamche Lamsele, Dushe Senje Wangbo She, Namjo Sunga Kepago, Yunde Denshe Yundenshe, Cheshe Trashe Trashe Chu, Trashe Gunje Trashe Pa, Tapa Trashe Nenage, Uje Chenpo Gadenje, Gaje Romo Chepode, Kurde Rinpo Pensonzo, Chode Gawa Chadawa, Chode Joje Zode, Jaje Namba Jazo, Jeje Kage Rake Cho, Jima Male Sewaje, Zode Bebo Janloje, Rama Menzo Jebendo, Doma Zube Mahade, Zube Mahamedondo, Godo Dusho Chenpo Ba, Samra Jeba Dusho Cho, Kado Tashe Kado Che, Sanye Tamba Kuvodam, Chamse Samba Samba Che, Nyange Deba Samba Do, Namge Taba Namjole, Namjo Shiva Shivani, Nyange Deshe Nyange De, Deva Nyange Devani, Dedo Sewa Kajoba, Chada Dule Devabo, Toba Meba Bemeba, Mige Mena Zanjeme, Mijo Kajo Chababo, Trashe Same Sabeja, Dune Duja Jemame, Neba Baba Jemema, Shindo Seba Sebeda, Kunje Kunje Nambabu, Nara Shebe Chunyende, Yishe Nime Sujama, Namra Tome Kunje Ru, Deso Sanje Lejeba, Sanje Toma Tamame, Namra Sanje Yuneba, Yeshe Meje Jemame, Yeshe Meje Deshe, Sige Wajo Mawache, Mare Checho Maweja, Mare Tamba Chogene, Mare Singe Zubane, Kundo Dave Chodoka, Seche Tewa Danadu, Esam Nima Charge Jidra Selma Vane Shishema Shime Sambo Dengeze Trajo Dena Jimboja Narbo Jimbo Chamba Sanje Jude Jinlande Jide Kaja Kunjaba Zuja Kame Dojede Denge Jemba Jemboja Jemba Shibo Dizega Chanjo Yena Medondu Deshe Shepe Yudenzo Mabde Yama Jezuri Yanda Sanje Lamyepa Sanje Kula Shishe Chan Nanga Dogo Shamane Sanje Kunje Yedaju Sanje Kunje Yedaju Sanje Kunje Wangduje Sanje Kunje Yedopa Bongo Mabde Tenishe Nanda Bongo Machawa Nijo Kunje Kalane Nyeba Chungwa Kunage Nijo Kunje Kalane Nyeba Chungwa Kundeba Yela Junye Sitsate Dawa Nama Jujijang Dinshi Tsuje Namba Jin Sheba Jebo Loba Jang Dine Namba Junye Dine Namba Jujore Namba Nisha Changchoba Namba Sanje Kujejo Sanje Kunje Chubeko Sheva Pame Jebabu Geje Tamje Gavarato Senje Geje Dengere Tema Nazo Tazo Che Jove Dharma Lobabu Tema Sunje Gejona Tema Jige Jegrone Nemo Kanan Tabeda Leje Kanan Sajeba Chua Jazo Gurega Gurega Vale Joma Nemo Nive Gunyamo Bacha Jeba Tembamo Nije Jebo Sherata Durya Jume Dunjeba Dushe Kunje Dumpanshi Namshe Dunye Gavashi Senje Kunje Yunade Senje Kunje Yirema Senje Kunje Yilane Deda Senpa Dumbraju Senje Kunje Zembraji Senje Kunje Yigawa Chubha Darshe Chubha Me Nurva Damje Namrama Deso Deso Me Belo Gyude Yete Sunjeda Kumbha Nade Dusondo Geje Damje Jiraji Geje Jege Zosanje Sanje Kunje Ranshinja Lune Lune Luje Cho Luje Dane Lobabu Suna Nazo Kundudu Nubo Chimbo Rinchedu Sanje Kunje Bojawa Sanje Shanjo Laname Sama Lejo Yigeme Sama Chimbo Lisomba Sama Dunga Chebabo Dile Chimbo Ligeme Tomba Chimbo Ligema Dile Tomba Ligeja Namba Kude Namba Me Chudra Sheshe Dileje Yema Mele Zilede Samde Shive Zimoje Samde Yela Gusheshi Binze Ridan Jireba Binze Lije Lije Jo Longje Zorgo Rinjeja Jude Kude Kuye Jo Sanje Jude Jijama Shudra Juba Nazoje Chishye Jude Dunjeba Fala Lama Laye La Laye Wambo Jumbe
The prayer of aspiration to Manjunatha, Sakya Pindida, turn to page 182.
अब यस पश्चात मञ्जुनाथ साख्या पण्डित प्रणिधान नेपालीको पृष्ठ सङ्ख्या 156
文书户主萨迦班智达祈愿文第153页。
Shisham
The aspiration for success, continuing on page 194.
अन्तिममा सुसम्पन्न प्रणिधान नेपालीको पृष्ठ सङ्ख्या 163
妙成就愿文第162页。
僧戒根来凝结道，强把念完念不讲，僧戒念不讲为戒，那所当戒戒忍住，南耶南耶谢王耶，三宝戒多共不讲，为戒教为三芒戒，莫乱戒等在不戒。道将月月僧戒所，地界六年门兰的，水天王者那作兰，两百相年也让木，僧戒当戒的瓦当，西邪内将内不出，当月朝我根的心，也得当阳的不出。我的同个谢拉杰，色的给我当我当，僧戒在我当戒多，戒我戒